experiments gone wrong, snake wieners, and actual footage of me getting a sponge bath. Episode 2 of Lovecraft Country is here with all new theories and details to break down. In this video, we'll be diving into the mystery behind Atticus's true ancestry, Artem's secret society, and don't even get me started on how adorable these baby Shoggoths are. Aww. But before we begin, show me some love by hitting that like button and subscribing so you can get notified as soon as one of my breakdowns comes out. Well, it didn't take long for George and Letty to get over their traumatic experience with the Shoggoths. That's because their memory of the event has been wiped. At the end of episode 1, we heard a whistle which was used to call up the Shoggoths, but this whistle also did that Men in Black thing, and they have no recollection of those bloodthirsty monsters. This mysterious Artem mansion just so happens to have tons of clothes for Letty to try on and all of George's favorite books. It's as if whoever wants them there wants them to stay. Of particular note are the favorite authors George recounts: Algernon Blackwood, William Hodgson, and Clark Ashton Smith. All of them are contemporaries of H.P. Lovecraft, who Lovecraft himself praised. In fact, William Hodgson's book, The House on the Borderlands, makes an appearance later on in the episode. A book written in 1908 about a man's hallucinatory account of a remote house and his experiences with supernatural creatures and other dimensions. Sounds familiar? While Letty and George can't seem to remember what happened the previous night, Atticus does. He seems to be impervious to the whistle's memory-wiping power, likely because he has the blood of Titus Braithwaite flowing through him, but we'll get to that in a bit. As resident children of the corn, William leads them to lunch. We pass a few interesting paintings. This is John Trumbull's 1839 painting The Last Family Who Perished in the Deluge, depicting a family washed out to sea, foreshadowing the deaths of two characters later in the episode. The second is Renault's 1795 painting The Genius of France Between Liberty and Death, depicting an angel in between Lady Liberty on the left and Death on the right. Our captives are stuck in a similar dilemma to this angel, held captive, deprived of their liberty on the one hand, and the specter of death on the other. Atticus wants to find his father, but according to William, he's on an errand and won't be back till later. They get a tour of this creepy mansion and its founder, Titus Braithwaite. Fun fact, Braith comes from the old Irish word for betrayer. Notice here this ring, a symbol of the Order of the Ancient Dawn, the secret society we'll learn more about in a bit. Titus apparently made his fortune in shipping, which Letty surmises involved the shipping of slaves. As we'll learn later, Titus did own slaves, impregnating one named Hannah, who happens to be a great-great-grandmother of Atticus. They decide to check out the village of Artem, which looks like it's run by the Amish, but find on their way their car, which was completely destroyed the other night, is totally repaired. Notice how Artem utilizes a lot of red, from the barn to the flowers to the kids playing whatever the hell this is. It's all to foreshadow danger. Atticus hears a whistle blown, the same sound he heard that called off the Shoggoths the previous night. It was blown by this woman who holds sway over this creepy stone silo, a silo Atticus believes may hold his father. It's important to note that the whistle is what makes Letty and George lose their memory, but Atticus is impervious to it. On their way back to the manor, as if they didn't learn anything from the previous night, they're saved from another attack by none other than Christina Braithwaite, the daughter of Samuel Braithwaite, who we'll meet in a bit. Atticus is taken to Samuel's lab, where Samuel's own organs are being harvested for a dinner later in the evening.
This is fucking raw!
It's okay, however, since Samuel has the ability to heal, healing Letty near the end of the episode after shooting her. Here we learn of a painting based off a biblical verse in the book of Genesis. This painting, however, was not painted by a Joseph Tannhauser as Samuel suggests. It's by John Miles and is called The Naming of the Animals, in which Adam helps God in creation by creating a beautiful hierarchy of all living things. That no good Eve arrived, however, and tempted Adam, throwing the hierarchy into a mess of tribes and nations. Now, Samuel here believes he can find a way back to the Garden of Eden where things are perfect and he can be immortal. He needs, however, Tick's power, the blood of his ancestors. Christina locks Tick in his room with a spell. Tick will later communicate with George through the walls using Morse code, calling their captors wizards. We'll also get this super odd scene where Christina delivers a baby Shoggoth from a cow. I'm still scratching my head as to why this scene was put in here, as it really doesn't advance the story, but it's possible the writers are setting something up and need us to know that these normal animals are being used as vessels for abominable horrors that can later be controlled by Christina. I think we definitely haven't seen the last of her. Tick, George, and Letty all experience hallucinations as part of this secret society society's evening entertainment. Letty makes out with a hallucination of Atticus only to find he's got a snake penis. We get this shot of Adam and Eve, Adam here also having a snake penis, and some have interpreted this story from the Bible as the snake symbolizing Satan and the forbidden fruit as insemination. I didn't learn that in Sunday school. George is visited by Dora, his brother's wife. It's really hinted here that Dora and him had an affair, and that this affair resulted in the birth of Atticus, making George Atticus's real father. George even tells Montrose that Atticus is probably not his kid, something the two of them apparently settled years ago. Further proof of this is when George tells Dora about a story he's writing involving a man who reunites with his long-lost love, and they stay together before a house collapses on them. And what happens at the end of this episode? A house collapses and George dies, allowing him to finally be reunited with his long-lost love, Dora, who died before him. The final hallucination occurs between Tik and Ji-ah. Remember that girl Tik called from Korea last episode? That's her. She's also that red alien thing that appeared in his dreams. She is really pissed at him, and I can't help but think that her anger is directly related to the bad things Atticus said he did while fighting in Korea. We aren't exactly sure what those bad things are yet, but we'll likely find those out in future episodes. It's really interesting to note here that in the subtitles, it says that Ji-ah isn't speaking Korean, but quote, the language of Adam. This is also the language she probably spoke to him in episode 1. But I don't speak Korean, so I can't be 100% sure. Later in the episode, Christina says the language of Adam is so tricky that men have died trying to wield its power. I'm wondering if the book Hannah escapes with at the end of the episode contains more information about this powerful language. This is likely what George called the Book of Names, or the Book of Life. It's the opposite of the Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon. Tik and George are invited to dinner. Sorry, Letty, it's boys only.
No girls allowed.
There, George recites the laws of their ancient order in a book he found called Bylaws and Precepts of the Order of the Ancient Dawn. By their own law, regular members must obey orders from those deemed sons among sons, those who are direct descendants of Titus Braithwaite, and since Atticus is the last blood heir, he orders everyone to go home. So Atticus, Letty, and George head back to that silo where they find Montrose having just escaped. And if you're looking for some nice tear-felt reunion between father and son, you ain't gonna get it. As they make their escape in that silver sedan from episode 1, we learn that this particular lodge is one of many in a much larger secret society. This one is called the Sons of Adam, and years ago they failed at conjuring a spell of immortality which killed everyone inside, except of course Hannah. Their escape is short-lived, however, when they smash headfirst into a force field. To make matters worse, Samuel shoots Letty and George. He ends up healing Letty to prove to Atticus that he can heal, but won't heal George until he gets Atticus's help with his spell. Sponge bath time! Christina tells Atticus of Samuel's master plan to open a portal to Eden, and there's a lot of talk about changing destiny and even a social commentary on how Atticus was made a member solely based on his sex, while Christina can never be a member because she's a woman. I think this is setting up her character arc since Samuel dies at the end. I'm wondering if she'll try to take over. While George is on his deathbed, we learn a bit more about Montrose's past. He was beaten by his father for liking to draw. Montrose would later go on to beat Atticus for his love of books. It's a sad but revelatory bit of information showing how trauma and abuse can pass from one generation to the next. As Atticus is forced to perform in this experiment, a slave to his situation, just like his ancestors were actual slaves to theirs, Gil Scott-Heron's poem Whitey on the Moon plays, a poem which depicts the plight of African Americans unable to pay medical bills and rent when the government is spending millions of their tax dollars on sending white folks to the moon. We are seeing Samuel's experiment at the expense of a black man, just like the progress of space advancement was at the expense of millions of black Americans. This sentiment is also found in James Baldwin's speech from episode 1. If you haven't checked out my video on that, I'll leave a link in the description. As the experiment progresses, a portal opens with garden-like flowers suggesting the Garden of Eden is on the other side. But before the experiment goes completely haywire, just like it did decades ago, Atticus sees his great ancestor Hannah visibly pregnant on the other side. We also see this black, smoke-like essence emanate from Atticus's ring. This seems to be the energy that turns the others into stone, but why it comes out of the ring and why it didn't turn Atticus into stone remains to be seen. We do know that it was Charlotte who gave him this ring, leading me to believe she played a role in sabotaging her father's plan as retribution for keeping her on the sidelines her entire life because she's a woman. I also just really enjoyed the juxtaposition of Atticus and his great prehistoric ancestor escaping the home as it's destroyed in their respective times. But even though Atticus makes it out alive, he finds out his uncle has passed, leaving us wondering what the heck will happen next. Now, there is an episode 3 preview which I've left a link to in the description below, but even after watching that, I'm still scratching my head what the whole series is working towards. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please make sure to like and subscribe. I'm planning on breaking down every episode of the series. I'm also interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below. You can also follow me on Twitter at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember,
Daddy loves you very much.